Reading Constituent Assembly debates. Today we will learn how the important ideals of the Constitution are elaborately discussed and debated in the Constituent Assembly. That means everything in the Constituent Assembly is debated clearly with the depth one. How the discussions and the debates took place in Constituent Assembly will be come to known to you in this class. Here various committees were appointed for drafting the constitution by Constituent Assembly. We will discuss those various committees later on. Here drafting committee is one of the main committee among several committees of a Constituent Assembly. This drafting committee was formed on 29th August 1947 with the chairmanship of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And after a long time, that drafting committee taking the opinions, suggestions, and the report of various committees into the consideration and prepared a constitution for India. That constitution placed in Constituent Assembly in 1948. Okay, that means Ambedkar, who was head of the drafting committee, placed draft constitution before Constituent Assembly on 1989. Some of debates of the Constituent Assembly are here as it is. Let's go through some debates which are occurred in the Constituent Assembly at that time. Those are shortened here. We will discuss. Dr. Ambedkar begins his address to the Constituent Assembly as it is placed. Ambedkar saying to the Constituent Assembly that Constituent Assembly was not elected by universal adult suffrage. Look at here. Assembly was not elected by right to vote of all. That means we discussed it. 10% of the population was given right to vote. So the members of the Constituent Assembly were not elected by universal suffrage. That is a point he mentioned there. And also said that as its members, that is CA in short form of the Constituent Assembly, as CA representatives were not elected by the right to vote but taken steps that all the people, that means maximum people, were given time for participation in the Constituent Assembly. Okay, by allowing the draft constitution for a general public near about for a, 1 year, I think so. It is placed for all the people, for public instead. Though members of a constant assembly were not elected, but it had taken steps that there could be maximum participation of members and general public. Okay, on 4th November, it was a Thursday, 1948, that is a draft constitution of the drafting committee placed before the Constituent Assembly. There, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, addressing to the Constituent Assembly, in his words, Ambedkar started addressing to the Constituent Assembly, that the Honorable Ambedkar started, Mr. President, I introduce the draft constitution by the drafting committee and move that it to be taken into consideration. Ambedkar started saying that the drafting committee had completed its work of making the constitution and placed on the table of the Constituent Assembly for consideration. That means it should be taken into account, it should be considered. Okay, and he says that the constitution, the drafting committee, had worked out effectively and prepared the constitution in accordance with the opinions, decisions given by Constituent Assembly, and also reports of the various committees. Okay, how drafting committee is one committee appointed by Constituent Assembly, like drafting committee. Several committees were appointed by Constituent Assembly. Look at here. One is Union Powers Committee. It is a committee with members of the Constituent Assembly, works on deciding the powers of union government, that is a national government. Second is Union Constitution Committee. This is the committee worked out on how should be the union government and its principles. Then Provincial Constitution Committee, another committee on the powers and the principles, rules and regulation related to the states. Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights. What are fundamental rights needed for the Indians? On that, one advisory committee from Constituent Assembly. Similarly, advisory committee on minority rights, tribal areas. In such a way, various committees were assigned by the Constituent Assembly. And this Constituent Assembly also directed the drafting committee to take the matter and provisions contained in the Government of India Act 1935. Maximum Indian Constitution had copied from the Government of India Act 1935. So some critics says that Indian Constitution is merely a copy of Government of India Act 1935. These all the committees and Government of India Act also considered at the time of drafting the Constitution, which is recalled by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar at Constituent Assembly on the day 4th November 1948 and stand. And finally, he says that drafting committee will be found to have faithfully carried. That means he says that we have worked up to the confidence of the Constituent Assembly. Okay, we have shown our dedication in preparing the Constitution. That is the point Ambedkar addressed to the Constituent Assembly before describing about the draft Constitution, right? And he starts saying about the draft Constitution. Okay, he says that draft Constitution is a formidable document. What is meant by formidable document? Huh? It is nothing can be added or removed from to the draft constitution in a easy manner. Okay, right? That means it is a formidable document. Nothing can be eliminated from the draft constitution. So it is called formidable document. At that time, there were 395 articles, 8 schedules. Today, it is more than 448 articles, 12 schedules, 22 parts, with 3 lists: union list, concurrent list, and state list. Okay, and many more amendments, near about 100, and it is 102 amendments it crossed. Understand? That is the present articles, schedules, parts in the constitution. Okay, and this is the what a formidable document. Understand? And he says that it must be admitted that constitution of no country, what is saying, that constitution of no country to be like Indian constitution. That means in the world, Indian constitution is the largest constitution. Everything is mentioned in detail there. So it is so bulky in the sense large one. Okay, the draft constitution of India is the largest constitution in the world. Understand? Right? As it is the largest constitution in the world, our Indian constitution is symbolically shown with a elephant. Understand? White elephant, which is large in size. Understand? So Indian constitution is compared with what you call, sir, symbolically shown with white elephant, which is a large one, understand? And he says, if this draft constitution that is prepared by drafting committee placed for public 8 months it was placed. See, this is the point. As constituent assembly members are not elected by the universal franchise but taken the steps that there could be maximum participation. So what is the step they taken? After drafting the constitution, the drafted constitution was placed in front of the public for 8 months. Understand how many? 8 months of time it was placed for public, for general public. They could read it, understand, and they could suggest their opinions and they could criticize their opinions on it, understand? So it is a long time given for a public. It means that the time is given, 8 months time is much enough according to the Ambedkar. It is much enough for a long, it is a much long time enough for friends, critics, advisories, understand, so that they could express their reactions to the provisions contained in the draft constitution. Okay, this is the step the Constituent Assembly had taken for maximum participation. Okay, that is mentioned by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in his address to the Constituent Assembly instead. And he says that how the constitution is prepared here. Okay, Ambedkar further stated that Indian constitution have prepared from the experiences of various nations and very different political organizations. While drafting the constitution, Ambedkar have studied the constitutions of various countries and taken the experiences of various countries and political organizations in preparing the best constitution for India. Understand, right? That means here we need to understand how much hard work they have given for preparing the constitution. Ambedkar had given lot of efforts, who studied the constitution of various nations and experienced in the legal matters, uh, in the legal matters and law, prepared this constitution along with his committee members. Ambedkar now highlighting that the important ideals of the constitution which are placed in our draft constitution. Okay, now he is highlighting what you call the structure of the Indian constitution. Okay, here he says that if we go through this draft constitution, there will be institutional structure, that is parliamentary government is provided in the draft constitution. What is the structure of the government is suggested by the draft constitution? That is parliamentary government. This is the one important feature of a draft constitution highlighted by the Ambedkar here, understand? And he says that after getting independence, 1 year after attaining independence, it is prepared. 1947 we got independence, and it is submitted, draft constitution submitted for Constituent Assembly in 1948. Understand? So what is the important feature of the constitution? That is parliamentary system of government. Understand? So Ambedkar says that if this draft constitution, if you place, what is that? If you place in the hands of one law student, a student studying the law, to whom if we give this constitution into his hand, such a law student will raise two questions. That means two doubts will get. Understand? That are two questions. What that two questions? One is he will ask, what is the form of government suggested by draft constitution? Second question is, what is the form of a constitution? Okay, these are the two questions will be posed, that means raised by a law student if this constitution is placed in the hands of a student of law. Understand? Now Ambedkar is answering to these two questions, starting his answer to the first one, that is, what is the form of a government? Just now we stated in the heading, that is parliamentary system of government, okay, suggested by draft constitution. Okay, so the draft constitution which is placed here says that head of the Indian Union. What do you mean by head? President. Understand? Head in the sense president. Okay, president of the Indian Union is called president here. Okay, in England he is called king there, queen. For Britain there is a queen or king, the head of the nation. But in India, head of the nation is not called king or queen. Okay, what is the name given to the head of the Indian Union as per the draft constitution? That is president. Understand? Right? President is called head of the India. Understand? And the title, the president is a title that is similar to the president of United States. Donald Trump is the president of United States. Okay, here it is somewhat critical. Try to understand. I am giving in detail. Okay, that means he is here. Ambedkar is describing the features of the Indian Constitution. At the same time, he is giving the similarity of the Indian Constitution to other nations and differences also. Okay, where we have differences with the Indian Constitution. Okay, that means the government suggested by Indian Constitution is what to call a parliamentary system, right? So is there parliamentary system of government anywhere, right? Whether we have similarity with any other nations? Okay, if similarity is there, to what extent we have similarity with other nations, and to what extent we have differences with other nations, that is described here. Understand? So he says that head of the Indian Union, what that? Head of the Indian Union is called president of India. Understand? As he said that Indian Union head is called president, immediately what happens to the members of the Constituent Assembly? They recall that in America also there is a presidential system. There the president is head of the America. That means we find some similarity with America. What that here the head of the nation is called president in India. In America too, head of the nation is called president. Okay, that is the similarity. That's all. But in the powers of the president of India and with the powers of the United States, that is America, does not match. Understand? For the title only we find a similarity. Understand? Beyond this identity, there is nothing common between the form of government in America and in India, which is proposed by draft constitution. In America, they have presidential system of government where president is supreme in authority. In India, parliamentary system of government is there. In parliamentary system of government, we find two heads. Understand? One is a president, okay, and another one is a prime minister. Understand? So two heads we find. Okay, president is a nominal. What that? Nominal in power, and prime minister is real in power. Understand? That means in America, president in America presidential system is there where president is the real executive of the government. In parliamentary system of India, prime minister is the real executive. Understand? Whereas president is the nominal executive. The powers of the president in America, not the powers, not similar to the powers of a president in India. Understand? That means only we find the title, we find similarity in the title. Understand? Then remaining is what different. They have presidential system, we have parliamentary system of government. Understand? That is what Ambedkar stated. Okay, please try to understand clearly. Understand? So what is the similarity here? There we find president in America, and here too we find president. Okay, that is a similarity, but in the form of government there is nothing similarity. Okay, that means they have presidential system where president is supreme in authority. We have parliamentary system. In parliamentary system, prime minister is the supreme in authority. President is just a for symbol in India. Understand? Those are the what two things. Understand? The two are fundamentally different. What two are fundamentally? President in America, president in India is fundamentally different. In the title, they have similarity. Understand? This is the what Ambedkar mentioned. Understand? Next, what to call another thing we see there, what to call under presidential system of America, president is the chief head of the executive. Understand? Total administration of the America is vested in the hands of president, but in India it is vested in the hands of prime minister. Okay, so president occupies the president of India is same to the king under English constitution. In Britain we find a king. Okay, so king is the head of the nation in England. So president is the head of the nation in India. So we find the president in India is the same like the king in England. Again, he is comparing with England. Understand? And he is the head of the state, but not the executive. Understand? What he's saying? President is like similar to the king in England, but it is head of the state. That means president in India is head of the India, but not head of the executive. Then who is head of the executive? Prime Minister is the head of the executive. Understand? Right? So that is a point you need to understand. He represents that nation but does not rule the nation. Who president in India represents the nation. When we say president, it means that on his name every work is carried in the nation. But all the work in the nation will be implemented by the prime minister. So the president represents the word nation but actually does not rule the nation. Who rules the nation actually? Prime minister, who is the real executive. It means in parliamentary system we find two executives. One is a president, nominal executive. Second is a prime minister, who is the real executive and who rules the nation on the name of the president. Okay, that is the what difference here. Understand? I'll stop the class here.